All right, welcome everyone. This is the fourth K8SUG Sydney meetup tonight. We always clarify before we start. So that number 25, it's overall across Australia. We kicked off the Sydney chapter about 4 months back after a huge success and hearing out what the community had to say, the kind of stuff they were getting from the events that we are running globally. So currently we have more than 20,000 members, more than 10,000 LinkedIn followers, and the link is the group and the community is growing. Before we start, here's the QR code for the shared folder where we keep the photos for that particular event. So I highly encourage everyone to, if you are capturing any photos, or even if you are not, scan that QR code so that you get the access to that photos folder. If you capture any photos, please upload for the event tonight to that folder. You might also find some other photos where you have probably been captured by someone else. So it would be good. Acknowledgement of the country. So Kubernetes, Australia respectfully acknowledge the traditional land of Kulin Nation people. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Here's the agenda. So we'll start with a quick introduction about the team, and we'll also share some information around the upcoming Kubernetes events across Australia, even globally. And then we have Sam from Relic talking about Relic's Kubernetes capabilities. And then we have Mariano, who's with us, who is going to talk about securing cloud native environments with NeuVector. At the end, we'll have a quiz time. That's the most interesting part of the event, obviously after the talks, because that's where you stand a chance of winning some really cool swag. Thanks to Relic for sponsoring the event tonight. We also have some giveaways, which I'll share in a moment to the winners of the quiz. And then at the end, we'll have some group photos, and floor will be open for networking and some Q&As. We are passionate about Kubernetes technology, so our mission is to accelerate Kubernetes adoption. We are learning from each other, sharing the best practices, see what other organizations are doing, and how people have been using the capabilities and the powerful Kubernetes models to even run AI and machine learning stuff in their organization. Just a quick glimpse of our organization, or the organizational team. It's for the, is it global? I think, yes. So that's me. I also have Felix and Faisal and Harrison. There are a few others in the room who help to run the event for Sydney. Our main sponsors, so Code Cloud. Every month, after each event, we have 3 Code Cloud licenses as giveaways to the prize winners. And a big thanks to AWS for sponsoring the event and Relic for tonight. As I was saying, we started off this particular meetup group from Singapore, but gradually with the community and with the support of our volunteers, we have grown to a very big size now. So we have our footprints in UK, Australia, obviously. We run events in Melbourne and here in Sydney. Recently, we started in Philippines too. Just quickly, the upcoming events. So we have hands-on workshop on 23rd of October. I think that's in Melbourne at NAB. Then we have few meetups in UK, Philippines, Singapore, and then Australia Sydney Day, which is happening on 11th November. if any of you is willing to join us, support us as a volunteer, as a speaker, or as a sponsor, please scan the QR code, key in your expression of interest, and we'll get in touch. If you want to keep yourself up to date, what's happening in the Kubernetes world, what are the events we are conducting here in Sydney or other regions, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and then you'll get to know via our posts. Just a little bit about Kubestronaut program. So for people in the room who don't know what Kubestronaut program is, this is something that was recently introduced, I think earlier this year. So anyone who gets all the 3 certifications in Kubernetes, they are recognized as a Kubestronaut. This is to recognize the people who have put in their effort and time to get all the certifications and to recognize their knowledge. So Yong Kong, who is basically the founder of this Meetup group, he was one of the first ones to get the Kubestronaut recognition. And talking about benefits, so one of the benefits of being a Kubestronaut is you receive a 50% discount on all the Kubernetes exams. And a huge thanks and a shout out to all the Kubestronauts in Australia who have happily agreed to donate their 50% discount to the community. So every month, we also have 3 50% discount vouchers as a giveaway to the winners of the quiz that we run at the end. Thanks to all the volunteers in our community. These are some of the discount vouchers. Again, one of the main benefit of being part of the community, you get access to some of those discount vouchers, or why not, if there is a saving up for grab, you get 40%, 50% discount, and there's also a certain percentage of discount that you get on cloud subscriptions. With that, I'll hand it over to Felix, who is going to be our MC for tonight. So Felix, over to you, man.
Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Which laptop was to use? This one?
Just kept it this way because I can't see what.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Alrighty, then let's dive into the talks of tonight. So first one is
before we kick off the talk. Before we kick off the talk, I just wanted to let Fizzle do a bit of announcement. So one of the key things about this community is helping each other, and as one of that help is, so we run this concept of who is hiring and who wants to get hired. So people who are looking for job, feel free to we'll call you here. You can talk about your skills, what your core expertise is, if you're looking for a job. And if someone has any openings in their organization, they can come up here and they can announce whatever role they have in their organization open to help others. I'll hand it over.
I just want to small announcement. While it's special, I'm one of the specialists in the region. So I work with the K8S group to arrange these kind of details. Two announcements is how many are using containers in general? You already know anyway, I don't know what it is here, but please maybe. How many are using containers on AWS? Okay, it's pretty good. So one thing as a part of my role is to collect information from the field. If you are not an AWS customer, doesn't matter. If you are using containers and you think something that is stopping you to scale or to migrate from your on-prem or to migrate to the latest version of Kubernetes, from the service point of view, let me know. My ID is FM Amazon. It's easy to remember. FM and Amazon. You can contact me directly or via the K8SUG group. Give us feedback from the field. What works, what does not work, and how we can improve Kubernetes. So AWS is a team that actually supports Kubernetes upstream also. So it doesn't matter if it's AWS or not. Of course, you should run AWS, everybody should run, but if you're not, right? The other important thing is my team is hiring in Sydney They're hiring specialists for serverless. They're hiring specialists for containers. Gen AI, who is not hiring for Gen AI. There are a few roles open in my team. They are business development and specialist SEO. So if you are interested, go to the Amazon job website and find out the GTM specialist role in Sydney. And let me know if you're interested, and I'll forward your case to our. Okay.
Alrighty, then that's it. Then we got over now. We hand over to Sam, who's going to start with the first talk. I'll let you introduce your talk and the title yourself. But welcome, Sam. For this.
Thank you. We have to do the laptop switch.
Yep. It goes well.
Okay. Hey guys, thanks for having me. My name is Mariano Carpentier. I'm a senior consultant at Mgmt. I've been working on software. We have an echo. Let's try to get rid of it. That's it. So I've been working on software for 19 years now. I've been working at all over the stack, front-end, API, and also the DevOps side. And lately, I took an interest on the security side of it, and I've been looking into NeuVector as a tool to work on that security. First of all, let me clarify. I know there are other tools than NeuVector. I haven't put my hands on them. So yeah, I will be focusing on this one. Which is, by the way, is open source. It's works under the Apache license. So although SUSE, who is the owner of it, has an enterprise version of it, anybody can download it and use it if you please. So we are going to be talking about the new approach. Why cloud native environments, they need a new approach to security. Used to be the case that just a firewall would be enough. No, this is no longer the case. There are many more attack surfaces that we need to secure. And we are going to be looking into NeuVector and the code they propose to resolve this situation. We're going to be looking into the runtime and supply chain security features that NeuVector brings, and zero trust, the zero trust model that it implements. Lastly, we're going to be looking into the integration of the tool into the existing teams of DevOps and security. So why do we need to implement something in this area? So the landscape has been changing. We have been using containers, microservices, APIs, and so on. These many new technologies, they create many more surfaces of attack. We call them attack surfaces, and they need to be secure. So the more components we have, the more risks we face. There is a dynamic nature of it. So within a day, you can get in your cluster many applications getting deployed or changing constantly, and we don't know really what is happening. If you are working in the DevOps team, developers may decide to deploy an application daily. So there is a need to have something automated in place. Also, there are complex dependencies. We are using libraries, we're using services. We don't know what is happening inside of libraries or behind those services. So there is also the need to secure them. So talking about the new attack surfaces, we have shared resources. We have containers running into shared resources. Those containers can be misconfigured. They can be susceptible to attacks because they are based on images. Those images may have vulnerabilities, and so on. At the same time, a developer or the DevOps engineer may have been rushing some delivery or whichever, and there may be misconfigurations. Those misconfigurations may be the entry point for an attack. An attacker will try to get into the cluster by getting into a container and leveraging all the misconfigured and insecure aspects of it to move laterally to other containers, and so on, and keep polluting the cluster. Also, there is the risk of a supply chain attack, which means tools like I don't know, Circle CI, GitLab CI, Jenkins, they can be vulnerable as well, and they can be attacked, and the whole chain, the whole supply chain, may be vulnerable to attacks and maybe compromising the security of our cluster and our applications running in the cluster. At the same time, we have APIs. Those APIs, well, Kubernetes offers APIs, and NeuVector in itself offers APIs, and most likely the applications deployed in this cluster will have APIs. So those APIs, they need to be secure. If they don't handle authentication and authorization properly, they are an entry point for an attack. So what is NeuVector and what it does? NeuVector is a cloud-native security platform and has been built from the ground up, thinking of cloud-native architectures. So what it does basically provides security in the supply chain and the runtime. It has two big groups of features, let's say. Admission control, we are going to go through them later, but basically admission control, compliance scanning, vulnerability scanning, those are when I have an image that I want to deploy, they will be scanned by NeuVector, and they will be it will be reporting to me as a developer or as a DevOps engineer if I have a vulnerability I need to fix, or if I want to fix it or not. But at the same time, we need to be running in we need to be executing this security in runtime, because the attacks can be happening in real time. We may have deployed a completely secure application that for some reason is getting attacked, and we need to have a tool in place or something in place to monitor those potential attacks. So running NeuVector in this laptop is pretty much impossible. I have to run too many virtual machines. Each one of them is 2 GB of RAM, so I cannot do it here. So I did the next thing. I took a couple of screenshots to show how this works very much. So one of the features of the supply chain security is admission control. In here, we have a rule, for example, that has been set up that says that we want to block all the non-scan images. So it doesn't matter if in this case, for this rule, it doesn't matter if the image has been has passed the security checks. It may have vulnerabilities, but we may want to just say, if it hasn't been scanned, don't let that to be deployed in our cluster. So with that rule in place, when we try to apply a deployment, we will run this and we will get an error forbidding us from installing that, from deploying that application until the image that the application is using has been scanned. So later on, we can go into the registry section. We can configure the registry and configure and make sure that the image we are going to use is scanned. And once the scan runs, NeuVector is going to let me pass, and it's going to let me deploy that application. Another aspect is vulnerability scanning. What it does, NeuVector, what it does is getting each image from the registries, going through them layer by layer, trying to identify potential issues that may compromise the security of it. It may be looking into permissions, the file system, maybe looking into dependencies. I had a case in which I deployed an application that was made in Node, and I was using a library that, according to NeuVector and according to the database of vulnerabilities they have, it had a potential vulnerability. So it said that I have that, And if I migrate to the next version, I was going to get rid of it. That is one. And then in here, we have an example of it, where this library, this package, in this version has a potential for being attacked. And it also says in which revision has been fixed. So if we have access to that application, we can simply upgrade it, and we will be having a more secure application. Lastly, we have the compliance scanning, which is basically if you want to be compliance with some standards, or if we want to make it compliant according our organization's rules, we can run it here. We can see if some things are being according to the expectations or not. And in here we have a custom rule that says, for example, if this file is found in the image, well, this is not in compliance. This is just a sample. It says if the file hack is found, it's not in compliance. So that is supply chain. But when NeuVector is running, it has 3 modes of operation. It's discovery, monitor, and protect. In discovery mode, what it's going to do, because you have to think that NeuVector is going to be running in the cluster, like any other application inside the cluster. So I will have many pods running on it, and it's going to intercept anything that is happening in the network, through that network, through that virtual network, and it's going to be monitoring the behavior of the containers and the traffic through the network. In discovery, it's going to assume that anything that is happening is expected. So it's safe to say, okay, we need to install NeuVector, we need to run it in discovery mode for a while, and then once has been all the potential uses of that cluster has been discovered, we can move into the next level, which is monitor and then protect. In monitor mode, what it's going to do is check the same things, but it's going to alert developers and DevOps engineers if any of the rules has been breached. And in protect, it's going to plainly block it. So it's going to prevent that traffic from passing through the network, or even if it's a container that is detecting to be compromised, it can isolate it, prevent all the traffic to it and from it. And during the protect mode, there is a zero trust approach, which means anything that is not explicitly allowed is blocked. So in here we have a graphic of how this works in monitor mode and protect. This is the enforcer, which is running in this level, and the enforcer, when it's in protect mode, this is how it's implemented. This is the OSI model, all the layers of the network, and this is a virtual switch that enforces those rules by literally inspecting the headers and body of the requests in those network requests. So how can we integrate this into working teams? First of all, NeuVector brings a couple of tools, plugins to integrate in current CI/CD tools like Jenkins and so on. And if we were to use it in a custom way, we can leverage the APIs, and it has a CLI as well, which is less powerful than the API that NeuVector brings, but it's also useful. NeuVector proposes a shift left approach. So instead of waiting for the problem to appear in production, we try to move that to the other previous environments, let's say staging and so on, or even to the developer. The developer can literally run a scanner in his workstation. He can grab an image and get the scanner from Docker, the Docker registry, and he can run it over the image that he or she created. Has the benefit of integrating the DevOps team and the security team, which sometimes they don't have the same interests in mind, but by using a tool like this, after it's set up, we are aligning those teams together and effectively integrating them in DevSecOps. And obviously we have real-time alerts and actions on those problems. The way the alerts work, we can send emails, we can use Slack. Also, the logs in NeuVector will always say which problems have been found. So there is an aspect, simplified security aspect once the application NeuVector has been installed in the cluster. In the beginning, it may be more cumbersome to install it and configure it and make sure it's working as expected. But once it's in place, it will potentially block attacks and it will potentially notify of any potential lack of security. And it does give you visibility of whatever is happening in the cluster as well. Gives you a score of how secure you are, and also you can graphically see the components of the cluster. You can maximize this, see where the information is coming from to. So yeah, this is, I wish I could show it working, but I should have deployed it in the cloud, but I didn't make on time. So the product is quite big. I haven't been playing around with other options for this. This is how NeuVector works and how it's implementing the security. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will try to answer. Yes. No, it's so when you want to run it locally, basically what you can do is get one scanner image from the Docker registry, and you run that image over the container you want to push to your repository or whatever. It's like a previous step before actually pushing your code and sending that to deployment. So are you
deploy one version into the cluster, and then use that also if you want to report that out of the CI/CD pipeline?
You can integrate in the CI/CD pipelines with the plugins. If you configure it for running once you push, will depend when the pipeline runs. That you can see, you will get a report. If you are the developer, you will get an email or probably Slack channel that you set up according to your setup.
But that will use the version that I'm running somewhere.
The version of
Like when the pipeline runs, where does the noise
is running in the cluster.
in the cluster?
Yes. So there is one standalone, which is the image that you can download from Docker. That is to run it and scan just local thing, but at the same time, it's always running in the cluster. So it does consume a little bit of resources from the cluster. Is anybody using anything similar or different?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I look into the other ones, but they are mostly paid and enterprise. So yeah.
There was one slide that talked about FOSA mode.
Yeah.
So what role is the solution fulfilling there?
Yeah, so you have many pods running that they form NeuVector. The enforcer is actually one of the pods, and it has a name. It's some sort of interceptor in Kubernetes, and is the one that is going to try to prevent you from installing anything in the cluster that should not pass. Yeah.
Is the best way to install it like via a Helm chart or something?
Yes, it can be installed with Helm. Yes, but also you can use the YAM deployment as well. So I didn't. Yeah, both of them. Both the options are available. Yeah.
And it's agnostic to any kind of Kubernetes.
Yes, actually running Kubernetes, I think can run in OpenShift as well. I haven't tried it. But yeah, can run. It runs inside the Kubernetes cluster.
So what are the requirements? It's so messy.
Requirements you mean in terms of hardware that is going to use? I don't have specific numbers. In the documentation, it says that it's not that heavy. I don't know how you can take that. Take it with a grain of salt because it's something running constantly like in the intercepting all the network hosts. So it's not gonna be absolutely transparent.
But just to put the you need to run how much memory is you need just to deploy.
When I deployed it in my machine, well, I had many virtual machines, and each one was 2 gigabytes, was around, I don't remember, like, I think 64. So I had many virtual machines running because I had many enforcers, then scanners, controllers. They are different types of pods running, distributed in your cluster in many nodes.
Is this a open source? It's called like Rancher is like SUSE basically.
Yeah, SUSE bought the product in 2021 and they open source it. So it's under the Apache 2.0 and it's quite open. You can do pretty much anything. But they have other plugins. I think they have kind of an enterprise version, but you can do pretty much anything with the free one. And you can literally see the source code as well. Yeah, it's in GitHub.
How long does it take to get up and running?
Took me a while because I had to run, I had to set up my cluster, but once you have the cluster running, it doesn't take that much longer. So you just prepare. In my case, I didn't use Helm. I use plain YAML. In the documentation, you have many samples that you can take and modify, and then you deploy that, and it will pull all the images and deploy it in your cluster.
You wanna is there a way to do it outside of the UI? Is there an API or?
Yes, and you can do anything in NeuVector. You can do it through the API, and there is a CLI as well that is not as powerful as the API. So you can do a subset of what you can do with the API.
Questions? All right, then Sam.
Okay, to go for round two. Okay.
Yeah, round two.
I've been sent. Option three.
You good with the connection?
Yeah, I just had to restart it. Slideshow. That's great.
Latest. Yes. Who? You can verify it here.
Yeah, I'll just touch it. Hey, hello everyone. Just before I start the presentation, I just wanted to comment like the initiative from the user group, I think is really impressive. And just touching on the exams, from my experience, so I've done the administrator exam, security exam for a few years in a row. They're not just like multiple choice exams. They're actually hands-on practical exams where they give you about 20 questions, you go into a cluster and you perform tasks. And they're actually really informative and really good for building out your skills. So although some of those numbers might have looked a little bit expensive, you know, $200, there are discount codes. There's also specials that come out for like Black Friday and a few other things. But included in that, you get a free retry and you get 2 practice exams. And the practice exams are actually harder than the real exam for reference. So just encouraging everyone, like it's worth trying, and I think it's a great initiative. Awesome. So we finally got it working. Thank you. But we'll jump into it. So look, I'm Sam. I'm from Relic, labels and everything. And I've only been at Relic for about 3 weeks now. And before I even started at Relic, my current manager had volunteered me to speak. So here we are. And you'll have to tell me if this is a good or bad presentation at the end of it. But I have actually used Relic extensively. So as a customer myself, I've actually implemented it. So I've learned a lot from that. And part of why I joined Relic is because I liked the product. So tying into that, I had little time to prepare. I actually screwed up the title. So in the initial presentation, you'll see that there's a title difference between what I've currently got on my screen. And we'll talk more to that. But leaning into my actual experience, look, maybe set some context about why I'm talking here. So look, I've been using Kubernetes since about 2017, back when it was vanilla. None of the public clouds actually had an option for it. And you had to set an environment variable to do rolling deployments. Like it was pretty green back then. Since then, I have deployed the vanilla clusters. I've gone EKS, so Amazon's version of Kubernetes, and I'm probably more specialized in Azure's version of Kubernetes. So please don't hold that against me in the current area. But that kind of ties into, I guess, my experience. So for the last few years, I have been at Microsoft, and part of that has been working with customers around Australia and New Zealand on Kubernetes. So doing like live assessments, recommendations against the well-architected framework, and actually providing proactive guidance from that perspective. So I have done a little bit with it, which is good. There's a QR code. It's a Chrome QR code sent to the dinosaur. But if you want to connect, you want to ask me a question, I know that the slides will be shown, but feel free. I'm happy to answer anything. Great, so let's fix the presentation. So New Relic isn't a monitoring company, it's an observability company. Thank you. That's my co-worker, lovely, very friendly too. And I kind of want to lean into that. So I did a draft of this presentation my second day, so I really had to just get something going. And my manager at the time actually just said to me, that's really boring, is actually his feedback, because the presentation was going to be vendor specific. It was going to be cool. This is exactly what we do, our platform, and kind of perfect world. But knowing that I made this mistake on monitoring and observability, I kind of want to lean into that a little bit more. So the talk is a lot less New Relic, and it's more of my findings of implementing observability, some guidance, some ways to think about it. And I think they're really interesting to share with the community. And then at the end, look, if you want to talk about New Relic and you want to reach out to me about anything, I'm more than happy to show how it would work in that context. Perfect. So now we've got some context. What is monitoring versus observability? And now this is my butchered definition of it, but monitoring is essentially tracking a predefined set of data points. So in my example, what are the number of pods running in my cluster or running in a deployment? Right? There is a specific metric that I am monitoring for, a predefined condition. Whereas observability is essentially having enough insights into a system that you're able to start asking questions, right? It's not information that I know right now, it's information I may need to know in the future, or context that I don't really know now that may help me in an incident or in other areas. As an example, why isn't my container running? It's asking questions about the data. Look, so again, very butchered diagram, but this is my view from my experience on a Kubernetes cluster, right? And whenever we're talking about Kubernetes, we still need to include the Kubernetes adjacent resources. What is the underlying infrastructure that it's running on? And this is a very simplified view, right? Depending upon where you are, you might have Prometheus, you might have all these other integrations installed, but taking it right back to the root, this is how I view clusters. And so what I want to do is I want to walk through the different levels, starting from the bottom, and talk about what data is available at those levels, and then kind of tie in a story about how it works together. So telemetry by data, that's by layer, sorry. So supporting infrastructure. I'm putting the clouds. Clouds are pretty important. I am curious though, is anyone running Kubernetes on bare metal or on premise or anything here today? You're all smart. It's terrible. It's so hard to do. Well done. So I will focus then on the cloud aspects of it, because that's a problem in itself. Okay, so the supporting infrastructure. So my background's more in AKS, but essentially, as we know with any cloud, we've got cloud outages, we've got service health, we've got maintenance activities. It's fantastic to run services on the cloud, but you lose a little bit of control. You can't configure when those maintenance patching events happen. You lose that. You give it up for not having to invest time in it. But there's still really valuable telemetry. Sorry, my little thing's hovering over the thing I want to talk about. There's really valuable telemetry in that section. So audit logs is something that I personally feel is really missed, right? Whenever I have seen an incident, and there's actually really an interesting really interesting research paper from Microsoft that talks about 40% of the outages Microsoft experienced were actually due to changes that Microsoft made, which is hilarious. And I actually love that ability to see that on my cloud, on my exact cluster, did someone make a change? Did someone go in and modify something? Did they restart it? Did they change anything? And again, learnings from the field, I find that super critical. Being able to visualize that data to say, hey, someone touched something, they modified this, I find is crucial information when I'm troubleshooting something. But summarizing that a bit more, so we got audit logs, we got cloud health, any incidents that are going off. We've then got the maintenance events, and then quotas and limits. You know, we don't hear about it as much anymore, but there are still limits on the cloud. And when you get a new account or you're setting up something in production for the first time, you may not have extended those limits. You may still be set at 10. So if you aren't tracking that data, you hit an issue, what do you do, really? Moving up to the control plane. So I think it was mentioned earlier that Kubernetes has APIs. So most of the actions in Kubernetes are driven through the API. And the control plane is essentially built up of a few different components. So we've got the API, we've got the controller manager, scheduler, etcd, which is the database state of the cluster, and then we've got the cloud controller. But to actually properly monitor that, we also need to look at the kube audit logs. So again, not to hammer in the audit logs, but being able to visualize Sam Bell made a change in the cluster and modified this service. Now, from my experience at Microsoft, the amount of customers who actually accidentally changed something through a GitOps action, they modified a Helm chart where they missed the label. I've seen it take companies offline, something as simple as that, and it took them hours to figure out what went wrong. And having the ability to visualize the audit log, what change happened, I think it's critical, and it's really undervalued from my experience. Moving on, we have the scheduler. So I won't go into the details of how the control plane works, but essentially when something is scheduled to run a container or a pod, it needs to go through the scheduler. It needs to find where it can run on the cluster, what availability and the nodes that are there to service that request. You want to know if there's any issues being able to schedule your containers. Events. Now, Kubernetes events, if you've used the cluster, you would know what the events are, but they're essentially just this pod started, it tried to download this container image, I passed the health check. Really, really critical information that most people would be familiar with. And then just overall cluster metrics. Is the API available? Is stuff running? The basics. Nodes. So this is the actual workers that would be running the containers, right? So in our cluster, we're going to have our workers, our nodes. The different clouds have different words for it. I believe nodes is the official vanilla Kubernetes term for it, but this is essentially the workers. They're ephemeral. They're there just to run the underlying containers, and we scale out horizontally as we need it. But from this area, we're going to be looking at operating system information, right? There's patching and all these other events that are happening. One thing then, if anyone does the exam, is actually touched on really well is Kubernetes, the control plane, or the nodes, sorry, connect back to the control plane through an agent. There's an agent running on the virtual machine that connects back to the API to receive instructions. I think we're all, if you've been working in IT, familiar with an agent talking back, right? Don't you want to know if that's running? Don't you want to know the version of it? What about the container runtime? We've got Docker, we've got Containerd. Don't you want to know what's happening with them? If they've crashed, are they available? Perfect. And then just general node metrics, CPU, memory, disk. Yeah. Moving up, so we've got workloads. So this is, again, the generic term for ways to run your work or your containers in a cluster. I'm trying to keep it quite vague, but you can't run a container directly in Kubernetes. If anyone doesn't know, the smallest unit that you can run in Kubernetes is known as a pod. So a pod can run one-to-many containers, essentially. So you run a container in a pod, and then a pod by itself is ephemeral. So you need higher level controllers that allow you to govern and orchestrate and manage that. So from this perspective, we've got some telemetry on the pods, right? So when something's running in that cluster, anything that is written to standard out or standard error will be captured, and then you can query and interact with that. We got resource metrics. We're asking some questions a little bit earlier about what the CPU and memory allocations are. Being able to track that for the containers is fantastic, and knowing what the actual utilization is, right? I don't know if anyone knows, but there's actually set conditions for when you go over memory. So if you set memory limits on a container and you go over, depending upon your container runtime, a certain action occurs. So for container D, if you run out of memory or you go above that limit, you get an out of memory and you get restarted. So knowing that that is happening and tying that in. And health checks, finally. If you're running in the cluster and you don't have health checks on your applications, go back, do it. It's incredibly important. And those health checks, there's different variations. Again, I won't go into too much detail, but liveliness, readiness, startup probes. They all have a specific purpose. They don't have to check the same endpoint. They can check different things. So investigate them if you're not using them, but they're critical to utilizing the most out of Kubernetes. And finally, the application level. So right at the top, right? The reason why we're running these clusters and we're learning all this stuff is so that we can host something that allows our business or allows us to do something. Really, this is the whole purpose of this investment in this technology, really. Now, I've got some asterisks next to telemetry, right? Not all of this telemetry is available natively when you run an application in a cluster, right? So you do need to put in some effort, and that's part of the features and functionality of New Relic, but the general term for it is application performance monitoring. And so that allows you to see some golden signals. This is a cool book written by Google about how SRE should do some stuff. And they've defined some standards called the golden signals, essentially. And so that's a way to monitor the health of an application. So that isn't native within Kubernetes, but you need that visibility, because if you can't see startup errors or you don't really know what's happening, all you get to rely on is the logs that the application wrote out. If the developer forgets to write the logs about what's starting, you have no insights, right? If there's a dependency on startup that you don't know about, you need that type of visibility. Otherwise, there are challenges. Perfect. So let's run through a quick scenario. So I put a really hyperbolic scenario in here. Let's just say we've got a monitoring alert that says select any container or any pod where the state is not running, right? So something that is not running, it's unhealthy, something's gone wrong. Well, let's notify our on-call team because they're not doing anything. It's a joke, but look, so we notify the team that it happens. So we're targeting an alert at this layer of the cluster, right? So we're saying select the pod where it's not running. Cool, let's say it triggers, right? And from my experience and what I've seen with a lot of customers, usually when this triggers, you probably have 15 other alerts, all these other layers that are triggering at the same time that are all symptoms of a similar event. And that usually causes fatigue, and it usually confuses people during an incident. There's no clarity. You have way too many alerts coming in to know really what's happening. So let's walk through this. So if I have the data available to me, this alert goes off. My team's being called, what are they gonna do? All I know at this point is that something isn't running. This is a very opinionated thing, but I don't believe anyone in a production outage should be using kubectl or kubectl, whatever people want to call it. I don't think you should actually be on the terminal, because if you can't see something that's happened when people aren't actively there, you don't have insights, right? If you have to wait for your principal engineer to jump online to fix something, it's just not going to scale. And I've seen that in a lot of organizations. So making sure that you have that insight without needing. So in this scenario, something's gone wrong, my team's been called. Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to start asking questions, and they're going to go through all the different layers, and there's different questions for each part of the layer. So like, is there an app issue? Is it starting? Is there a dependency I don't have? Is the database offline? Did someone rotate the credentials? Did they expire? Is there an issue on the application? Next, was there a deployment? Again, Microsoft, 40% of the time they broke their own stuff. It happens a lot, right? Knowing that a deployment happened or a version change occurred. Moving down to the workloads, are the health checks passing? Those health checks are there for a reason. Was there an issue pulling the image, right? I have seen for a major retail organization in Australia, they had a 5-hour downtime because someone changed the name on the container image that was published to the registry. They bumped to a new version, couldn't find it, offline for 5 hours. If anyone's heard of Linkerd, which is a service mesh, they went offline. And anyone that was using Linkerd last year, there was a 6-hour window where you couldn't pull the image from them, right? These things are quite important, knowing that that is happening. And then viewing the pod status. Is it running? Is it not? And is it pending? So in our example, it is not running. So what state is it in currently? Moving down to the nodes, the virtual machine, the server that it's running on. Look, are the nodes ready? So the nodes themselves also have statuses. Is the node ready or not ready? There's a definition for that, but it gives you the insights on whether it can serve or run more pods. And the other one that's really important is there any capacity available? If anyone's run Kubernetes and you've gone into the discussion about resource requests and limits, I won't go into that. That's a topic in itself. But if those limits and requests aren't set properly, you could allocate a lot of resources that are doing nothing. So you might have a virtual machine that's at 5% utilization, but your cluster thinks it's over provisioned and it starts scaling out, which again happens a lot. Cool. Moving to the control plane, look, again, asking more questions. Can pods be scheduled? Are there any events happening in my cluster? And did anyone make any changes? Did someone do a deployment that broke something? And finally, again, down to that supporting level, are there any cloud issues or any cloud health events that are happening? For both clouds, I won't pick on Microsoft this time. There have been outages lately. Knowing that these things are happening, to me, are very important. And also, did we hit a quota? I touched on it. You're going into production for the first time. You're following the cloud adoption framework. You've got a new account or a new subscription. You forgot to update your quotas. Done. You have a production issue. You can't scale. It happens. And then asking the question, are we scaling? Are we trying to scale? Is there any audit logs of something happening? Cool. So again, my scenario is very hyperbolic and it just makes my point clear, but root cause analysis. So let's say that we figured out what happened and then we walk through that. We asked all those questions. We got the answer to it. What were the answers? So again, we got our alert on the workloads. And so we understood that it wasn't running, but it was in a pending state. Okay, interesting. What does that mean? Well, when we looked at the nodes, they thought that they had no capacity left. Someone over-provisioned pods. They over-requested resources. Okay. So then the control plane saying, I can't scale nodes out. Okay, so if I can't scale nodes, that means I can't schedule my pods and I can't schedule my containers. Why couldn't I do that? Because I hit my cloud scaling limit, right? If you don't increase the quotas sometimes and you have a limit of 10, something as simple as that on on the supporting layer, the underlying infrastructure that it's running on can be the root cause of an application not running, right? You need to be able to see things throughout that entire stack and ask those questions. Cool. And to me, just to summarize again, observability is the ability to ask those questions, right? So observability can reduce the mean time to resolution, detection, all of those words. But something that hit home quite recently is it's actually much more than that. So I saw this slide internally. I haven't asked for approval to use it. So we'll find out how that goes. But if we see here, we've got this circle and we've got observability, right? And in that, we've got monitoring. So monitoring is a component of observability, right? And so at day one, we're going into production. We have some known idea of what our application is going to do. We have some generic idea of what Kubernetes things we need to monitor, but we don't know everything, right? And so observability is having the information to ask those questions and then continue to build out your capabilities, right? And some stuff I just want to touch on here is like, it's not limited just to troubleshooting, right? Observability allows you to track changes, see capacity planning, optimize your cloud spend. And also in some instances, it becomes live knowledge. If you have a properly instrumented environment, there's something as a service mesh. These tools go and detect what requests your applications make, and it will build you a map of where everything is going. And then it will color code the map to tell you if it's red or not, if there's an outage. Like, yeah, I'm pretty impressed by that. But the other thing I want to kind of hit home is this, right? And I see this all the time, and it's not just with products like New Relic, it's just in the industry for monitoring in general. People really only use the tools reactively. Like, there's an incident, I'm called to New Relic, like, oh shit, I got to log in, I got to do some stuff, investigate. They're not just for reactive investigation. You can use them to ask questions. Again, am I over allocating? Can I scale out better? What is my throughput? How do I improve my user experience? Are there any business metrics I can tie into operational metrics? There's so much more that you can do with it. So look, wrapping up, the one and only slide of New Relic, which is, look, New Relic is a cloud-based software as a service, right? You don't have to host anything as an endpoint. And if anyone is interested, we have really generous self-sign up without a credit card, 100 gig of data. You can just jump in and start playing with it. If you don't want to do that, you can go to the New Relic University. You can just Google that, and they actually give you credentials for a username and password that has data already set up. So if you don't even want to use your own details, you can go get a free username and password and just explore the platform. It's already got data in there. You can look at it, right? So finally, it's, I guess, defining it a little bit more. It's full stack observability. So it's the click from someone in your application or your website on their browser. It's the JavaScript error that your user received, being able to trace that all the way down to the API making a backend call, down to the cluster that it's running on, to the Kubernetes pod that it's on. Having that visibility, and the one thing I actually quite like about New Relic is its visibility in context. I have managed a lot of Kubernetes platforms, and I have dealt with the silo of platform engineer and developer. Sorry, developers, but there is a problem. If there's an outage, there's an issue, who owns it, right? Who's dealing with it? Now, the thing I love the most about New Relic is when they go to their application, there's a tab there that says Kubernetes, and then it gives them all of the Kubernetes metrics in context. It tells them what happened, failed health checks, all this information that we've gathered from all the different layers is in front of the developer. So that's not who's at fault here. It's very clear about who's looking at what. We can put in some guide in the comments. One named one of the industry leaders for the last 12 years running. But look, we've also got a lot of open source integrations. So native Prometheus support, but also native OTel support. If you want to use OpenTelemetry, you can just send us the data. There's online examples. But yeah, if you're interested, come grab me. So yeah, questions?
How is New Relic configured for any existing Kubernetes cluster, maybe cloud-based?
Yeah, sure. So New Relic provides a few different deployment options. So you've got your standard Kubernetes manifest if you want to do it yourself, but there's also Helm charts. So there's actually nested Helm charts technically. So we have what's known as the New Relic bundle, and that's just the one shop that gives you all of the charts. You pick what you want to send us. If you want to use the OTel integration, you want to send us logs, you can. You select that. So you can deploy it through Helm. And you can also, remember that APM section I mentioned? We actually have an operator that can automatically instrument that into applications. So if it's an off-the-shelf application that you don't own, you can instrument that in.
Just the APM and the golden something.
Yeah, golden signals, yeah.
I didn't get that.
That's okay. So has anyone heard of golden signals? Okay. Sorry, Reese.
Oh, yeah.
That's my co-worker, by the way, ignore him. So the golden signals, Google released an SRE checklist / handbook. And in that, they summarize what Google looks at and cares about from application performance. And the key things is basically there were 4 metrics. It was saturation, throughputs, errors, and latency error. Latency, yeah.
Right.
Wait, Reese. Thank you. Yeah, Perfect. And so that was the fourth metrics that it was important to understand if your application is available, right? And so they were what Google was using to actually measure the health and the responsiveness of their websites. So when I'm talking about APM, that is an agent or tooling that can collect that metric, but it can also get a little bit more. So if you're interested, it does stuff like distributed tracing. So if in a microservice architecture, sometimes one request then spans out to multiple. With distributed tracing, you can see the request and visualize it throughout the stack. So it basically allows you to get telemetry that's not just logs. A lot of applications and a lot of developers will write, a lot of log-based information. But when you start looking at APM, you can do metrics, events, traces. You start expanding that out, and those tools can automatically collect it for you.
So is that APM the expansion of the traditional application?
It is, I guess, what do you define as the traditional application performance management?
That's what the ITIL guy, that's ITIL.
Okay, yeah. So it's essentially, it's an agent that you're installing that it gives you automatically instrumented information, outbound requests and everything. And traditionally, a lot of applications were just measured based on the host that it was running on, CPU and memory, and then any logs that are generated. So it's a much more mature and robust way to visualize and support applications. If that's, yeah, sorry, that's my best attempt. Nope.
And it's a commercial product, which we look for trial.
Yeah, there's you can sign up for free. There's no commitment. You don't have to put in a credit card. You can literally go to NeuRelic.com, sign in, publish data, play around with it, and up to you if you want to put in a credit card or do anything. You can contact us. And again, what I mentioned is if you go to the university, you get free credentials. You can go into a pre-configured New Relic environment that has this data coming in and click around and see if you like it.
And how do you charge? Like based on volume?
Yeah, so again, this is not a sales pitch, to be super clear with everyone. And you're also testing the 3-week newbie, so you go away. But look, there's really, I think it was about 2019, New Relic actually simplified its licensing product. So a lot of the vendors in the market will license based on agents. So if you're installing infrastructure agents or application agents, New Relic just went down the route of, we will bill you for how many users have full access to our product and the data you send us. So it's a consumption model, right? If you have 10 users that have full access to every single curated view, and then the data that you send us per gigabyte, I think it's like 30 cents per gigabyte. US. Thank you, Reese. Yeah. And just
does it less you monitor the lower the price? Is that
yeah, it's basically it's consumption based. You send what you need to, and the thing is that's a lot better than paying for a set data that you may not be getting the value out of it, right? You choose what's valuable to you, and you can optimize it. It's in your hands. One thing I just want to comment on the user part of it. That's full users. You get free users unlimited. You don't pay for it, and the difference is really free users can see dashboards and they can interact with certain parts of the platform. But the more in-depth, pre-built, curated views and interacting with certain pieces, that's licensed. But from your organization, you may only have 5 admins. Not everyone needs to be a full user.
Does this APM module require any modification to the application?
Yeah, so
existing applications, let's say some customers already running an application and they want to have advanced knowledge.
Yeah.
Of the application, do they have to modify it? And is like a lot of complexity to do that, or it's simple? What's your view on it?
So yeah, so when you're talking about instrumenting the APMs, so I'm just going to go with the JavaScript example, Node.js, because we're going back to them. But you can just install the New Relic dependency. So it's an npm package. You can bring it into the library, and then you can import it, and it'll automatically instrument. If you want to embellish that with business metrics or extra telemetry, or you want to send custom stuff, you can just interact with it within the code. But from a basic, I want data, you can bring it into the code. There is a small change. It's really not a lot. But at the end of the talk, I mentioned there's something called this operator that we've released that can actually automatically instrument it for you. So it's now starting to remove that need to have the developers doing certain things. if you've got it running in your cluster, it'll do it for you. Now, being really transparent, that's the defaults for you, right? If you're building something that's custom and you have specific requirements, my recommendation is you always put it in the application properly.
Right, obviously, that makes sense, yeah.
I have one more query.
Sure.
So in the last slide, I see that it can integrate with Prometheus.
Yeah.
Integration. It can install its own agents on the Kubernetes cluster. New Relic will install its own CRDs and capture the admission. It will interact with admission control and it will get all the telemetry. What use case will be there where it will first let Prometheus generate the matrices and then it will capture the matrices to New Relic?
Okay, yeah, sure. So for everyone's context, Prometheus is a time series database, but it also, within the context of Kubernetes, Prometheus is used to scrape running containers. So essentially every 15 seconds, every 30 seconds, if you set an annotation, so a little label on the container, it'll go to that endpoint and collect data. So a lot of developers could potentially expose metrics, business metrics or whatever on that endpoint. And then Prometheus goes and scrapes that, puts it in a time series database, and you can query it. So New Relic is able to then New Relic can do that scraping without needing Prometheus installed in the cluster. We actually have our own Prometheus scraper, part of that package that you can turn on or off. It'll go collect that data and send it up to New Relic. But it can also get the data from Prometheus and also ingest it. Something cool that nobody asked for, there's a thing called Keter. Has anyone heard of Keter? Cool. So Keter is the Kubernetes event-driven autoscaler, and it's cloud native foundation, and it's a way to scale applications. Keter can query New Relic, right? So you can actually have applications running in that cluster scale based on a query for business logic back on the side, right? So you can scale applications based on data you've ingested, which I think is pretty cool. Outside of the cluster is what I'm trying to clarify. Awesome.
What's popped in your mind, like based on the use case which you're sharing, the outcome was that the cloud was not able to provision more VMs. Like
I hit my quota, yes.
Yeah. I checked just now in Google for all the three Kubernetes versions from GKE, K8SUG, EK. None of them have default nodes autoscaler on by default. So ideally, in production environment, if the node autoscaler was on,
Was
this
off.
would have been handled by default.
No. I guess that's my point. Let's say that it was on and you're already at 10 out of 10. And then you start another pod, and that could be started from a deployment or anything. That would then require a new node, and you're at 10 out of 10. So you would need to increase your limit to 11 to have that new node. Does that make sense?
The nodes were already
Maxed out. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. If anyone has any more questions, come grab me. I'll be around afterwards. Not too scary, I think. But thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Sam. I think that was a great talk. I really love that slide where you had shown the different layers of the telemetry. All right. So awesome. This brings us to the most exciting part of the session tonight. It's quiz time, which will obviously need everyone to be online. So if you don't have a data or if you're not able to go online, feel free to connect to the guest Wi-Fi. Here is the password. I'll give everyone a few more seconds to connect to the Wi-Fi.
No password anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, there is. broken wires.
That's
Yeah.
it just works because of
Alrighty. Okay. Okay. Just in the interest of time, I'll move on. We are running a little bit over today. All right. So before we start the quiz, your feedback is highly valuable. So we'll appreciate if you can scan the QR code and provide your feedback, good, bad, or what can be improved, so that we can keep improving how we run these events and make sure that the community get most out of it. So for tonight, we have 3 6-month code cloud access, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the event. Then we have 50% Kubernetes exam, 50% discount codes on Kubernetes exam. And thanks to the sponsors for tonight, Relic, we have a lot of swag as a giveaway.
Please go grab it. It's all in the corner. Help yourself. Whatever you want.
Yes. But other than the swag, we have 3 bags as well, Relic branded, and that's for the winners. So in total, we have prizes for top 9 winners of the quiz. So make sure you actually, we should have shown these swags at the beginning so that people have paid the attention to our presentations tonight. Okay. Is everyone connected online? If yes, so I'll bring the quiz here. Sorry. Yes. Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me share my screen. Anyways, you are the only one. Okay. Please scan the QR code for the quiz.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll watch you. I can do something. You can give me questions and I'll be able to.
Okay, I'll give it a few more seconds. We have 15 people already signed in. Yeah, more than 30, I think, isn't it? Ah, there it is. So while people are getting in, just want to share some interesting story. The last time, there was someone who was trying to sign in for the event. And he was trying to sign in at the very last moment, and the registration was closed. That was my mistake. I closed the registration before it was. Anyhow, he happened to know one of the organizers. So he reached out to us, I want to attend. We did register them. He came in, and guess what? He won the first prize. And what was the first prize? Xbox Series S. He went back home with the Xbox Series S that was sponsored by one of the sponsors last time. But interesting things happened. So he was struggling to register himself and happened to be the winner of the Xbox. All right, so we'll get off. And now it's time to say how many people were listening to the awesome talks by our presenters. Okay. So here's the first question. What is observability? Actually, I'll switch it to leaderboard so that we know. Okay, after the first one. Fine, 18 of you got it correct. So moving on to the next question. Which of the below is not a valid telemetry source from a cloud from the control plane? Kubernetes events logs, container logs. Kubernetes audit logs or Kubernetes scheduler logs?
Oh, whoa.
Ah, there is a bit of race going on. All right, so we have Trey at the first place. Next question. You're not reading it.
At a high level, what are the Kubernetes architecture layers? One, support infrastructure cloud control plane nodes work with apps. Support infrastructure nodes control can work with apps. Nodes support infrastructure control can work with apps. Control planes support infrastructure nodes work with almost. Okay. Interesting. Whoa. Yeah.
Did you get it right, Felix?
I didn't participate.
All right. Moving on.
So next. Ready? Does Kubernetes provide native capabilities to collect images from the application? One, yes, with cube metrics and pod logs. And two, not natively. The application needs to be instrumented to leverage tools like Prometheus. No, still required application to provide standard and cube metrics. Container metrics. Can you do it so fast? Yes. Whoa, okay, whoa.
I think we had a pretty long discussion on that. You were talking to someone on the application.
Yes. Yeah. It's just not native essentially. And sorry for the format of the questions. I thought it was going to be a quiz set afterwards. That's why they're quite long. So apologies for the level of detail here.
Right. There is again a swap in the first, second, third position. Okay, that's good. Interesting.
Why is it variable to collect Kubernetes logs for troubleshooting?
I hope no one selects one.
And no one. Oh,
wow.
That was very good.
That's great. Looks like people were listening to you.
What are the three primary nodes? Correlation and NeuVector. Yeah. Hmm. What is the primary function of NeuVector's discovery mode? Does it enforce security rules in this state?
Guys, speed also matters. If you look at the first two people, they're at the same.
Which types of, sorry, people.
Which type of security does NeuVector family focuses on? Why? Network security and data encryption, runtime security and supply chain security, user authentication and access control, endpoint security and monitoring. Nice.
Yeah, 11 this time.
Which key features does NeuVector provide to secure the software supply chains? What is the primary purpose of runtime scanning in containerized environments? Nice. Oh, I was gonna say almost everyone got it correct. That's it? Yeah. All right. So that's it, people. Now let's see, who are our winners? Awesome. So our first winner. Is it you? I thought you were. No, I thought you were getting ready to participate in that session. Can I ask you to come here, please?
Was this a live relation?
Thank you.
Yes, I know.
It's all right. You got three options pretty much to choose from. Code Cloud Access, 50% discount, or a super awesome new Relic bag.
It's actually a tough one. No, I want the Code Cloud Access.
Ah, okay. I thought you were gonna go for the awesome. Congratulations, mate. So, can you pass on the details to Ram and just go forward. Congratulations. All right, Vimal.
Good choice.
Thank you. Yes. Arman?
Leftover?
Yeah, we got 3 vouchers, 2 Code Cloud Access.
Oh, okay. I thought 3 was just gonna do.
And top 9.
Top 9.
Congratulations. What do you want?
No pressure. No, I'll get the Code Cloud Access.
Okay, can you pass on the details? Right? Alex?
Yeah.
Congratulations, Mike. What would you like?
Oh, I get back. Thank you.
Good choice. Summer? I'm not gonna give him 2. He just got a bag. Congratulations. What would you like? All right, so
Another good choice.
all right, for the next 4 winners, bags are gone. So you can either choose 1 Code Cloud Access or 50% discount. Nicole? Congratulations. So you like the 50% discount or code cloud access? Awesome. All right, so for the next three, Manfred, and PS, if any of you wants a 50% of 50% discount voucher for Kubernetes exams, let me know. If not, the code cloud access and the back are gone. Unfortunately. Free? You want the 50% discount? Okay, can you? With patience. Can you give him your details, please? Manfred?
Yeah, password or something, I'm good.
PS?
Yeah, okay.
Congratulations. Yeah, if you can pass on your details. Ram, that would be great. Now with that, thank you very much, guys. We pretty much are at the end of the event. Now, before we wrap up, group photos. So once PS is done, giving his details.
So guys, take your rubbish with you, please. Put in the bin. And if you leave the rubbish outside, please take it away. Okay?